What is up, everybody, and welcome back to the Tight Lines Podcast. In today's episode, we cover everything related to an out-of-state fishing trip. From my reasons why you should plan one, to tips and tricks for what to bring and how to be successful, this episode covers everything you need to know before going. So without further ado, let's get started. So quick background on this. Where did this episode come from, right? Where did this idea come from? I'm sure you guys wonder where I get my topics from. So I actually just got back yesterday on July 7th from a nice long vacation in South Carolina at Hilton Head Island, and I did a ton of fishing while I was there. While fishing was not the primary purpose of this trip by any means, there was a ton of fishing involved. I brought plenty of stuff and had all sorts of fun experiences while down there. I filmed a ton of content. I made 5 total YouTube videos while I was down there, so if you guys want to see those as they come out, go ahead and check out my YouTube channel, tylerplackefishing. You can also check out my Instagram, some of the stuff we post on there as well. Same thing. Fished a ton of new waters, a ton of ponds and lakes and some water sources I had never fished before down there. I actually also tried saltwater fishing for the first time ever. I went ahead and got my license and bought some saltwater gear, and I did some surf fishing and I did some pier fishing. Although those were extremely unsuccessful. And I wouldn't say extremely. I had a little success for not knowing anything about what I was doing. It was still a ton of fun to start to learn a different type of fishing. And yeah, this was something that obviously being here in Indiana, I could never do. I can't surf fish. I can't, there's no salt water here in Indiana. So it was really fun to get to try out some saltwater fishing and target some new species. So without further ado, let's move in first to my top three, reasons why you should book an out-of-state fishing trip. So my first reason is going to be that you get to target new bodies of water in new conditions. So what I mean by this, so my ponds around here are obviously freshwater one. I fish a ton of freshwater down there, but they are overall very clear, weed choked though, and very Midwest style, very shallow, not a lot going on. And so targeting these new bodies of water, different types of ponds and lakes down there with, different microorganisms and different vegetation and different, predators in there. It allows you to test the skills that you have, that you've learned so far, all the information that you know and how you can apply it into a new situation. And you also get to learn a ton of new things that, I can't learn here that now I can apply when I'm here. For instance, for me, when I got down there, a lot of the bodies of water were extremely, extremely dirty. And by dirty, I don't mean like trash in them. I just mean like they, very low visibility. So even during the, heat of the day, I wasn't throwing anything natural colored. I was throwing a ton of blacks and blues and stuff like that. Mostly black and blue is what I was throwing. And that's what was working because they weren't looking at color specifically. They were looking for a profile to find. So, having to learn how to find, where are these fish hiding in this water source that I have no idea what the bottom's like, right? I don't know what the bottom composition is. I don't know what the depth is like. I have no idea anything about this water source. At this point, I'm looking for structure that I can throw around. I'm looking for, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, if I'm a fish, where am I going to hide at, right? And so that's where I'm throwing my stuff. I'm throwing very, because of the water clarity, I'm throwing things that, are a little bit bigger, have a little bit, bigger. I'm not throwing fluke tails, I'm throwing paddle tails, right? That little bit of extra swishing should help. Chatterbaits worked really well. Spinnerbaits were okay. When I throw a jerkbait, I'd throw something with a rattle in it, especially, lots of little rattles. I wasn't doing big one knockers. I was doing lots of little rattles. I threw a little bit of like craws and like soft plastic, like Texas rig craws. But that was mostly just around structure, where I knew a fish was sitting that I could just kind of drop it next to and it would notice it anyways. But I was typically throwing those with scent. So a lot of, Strike King. I was throwing the Rage Craws with the coffee scent in them. I didn't really throw any power bait. I'm not a big power bait guy. I haven't bought into Berkeley yet. And then I also had to learn how to avoid alligators, which was a ton of fun. Obviously trying to figure out, it's very different to fish with an alligator because here you can kind of play a fish till it gets tired and then pull it out of the water. Down there it was you hook into a fish and you got to fight it to keep it underwater. but get it into you quick and get it out, because you got to get away from the bank, because there's alligators looking for that fish, and boy, would they chase you. I'll tell you guys what. So, learning how to, feel for different style, the bites were a lot different down there. They weren't nearly as aggressive. They were very subtle, because fish that have big bites down there and are very aggressive typically get eaten by alligators. So they're very subtle, and learning how to fish that. Also learning how to fish, freshwater versus brackish water versus saltwater. And getting out of a routine, and fishing the same old bodies of water. So all that, goes with reason number one of, you get to target new bodies of water, new conditions, stuff you just can't experience at home. Number two was, targeting new species. So think about it, right? New bodies of water, new species, new area. So we all know that if you go north to fish, you're going to get, good smallmouth fishing, good pike fishing, good muskie, walleye, saugeye, etc. Plus, you get plenty of saltwater fishing still up on the North Atlantic, Northern Pacific coast. You get the Great Lakes. You get a ton of, different fishing there. You get lake sturgeon, all sorts of fun stuff. But going south, especially if you get real into like southern Florida, you can get into peacock bass. You get into big, typically from what people talk about, bigger fish. Plus all the saltwater along the, the coasts and through the Gulf. So obviously getting to target new species was fun. While I did not have any success on these new species, I did not catch a single saltwater fish. I did get some bites though, so I was getting somewhere. Getting to learn, new techniques and new lures and new scents and all that kind of stuff. Especially when I was targeting the saltwater fish was a ton of fun. So I got to target target all these new species, which while I didn't get to catch any yet, hopefully soon I will. It was still just a ton of fun to get to try and target them and to try and do a new thing that I've never done before that I can't do here in Indiana. So number two, my second reason was getting to target new species. My third reason is going to be you get to make memories that are going to last you a lifetime, right? So I will forever remember being down there fishing and almost stepping on an alligator. And this is a terrifying, it was a terrifying experience, but it's also, looking back, kind of funny. We've all seen those videos online where you see the guy fishing, he's wearing his GoPro, and you're like, dude, there's an alligator right in front of you, and he doesn't see it. And I've watched a billion of these, and I'm like, how do these people not see it? They must be, they must not be paying attention, they must not be looking. But guys, I'll tell you what, until you've done it in person, I'm sure some of you have, but not all of you. Dude, these alligators can hide even on, this one was sitting up in the grass. I'm going to get this posted. You're going to be able to actually see it on my YouTube, so go ahead and check out my YouTube. It's going to be on my shorts coming out at some point in the near future. So you will be able to see me almost stepping on the alligator. I'm also going to post on my Instagram, tylerplackefishing, so go check that out too. But, you're going to make a ton of great memories. Now, I caught my PB down there this week, which was fun. Not a huge fish, just a bit over 4 pounds. I kept trying to go back to that spot to find bigger fish, but every time I get there, I get 3 casts in and an alligator would chase me out. So there wasn't a ton I could really do back there, but I know that I'm going to continue to target that spot when I go back. So you might do horrible. Even if you go down, you do terrible, you don't break your PB, you don't catch a new species. It's still fun. It's an adventure. I went out catfishing with my buddies in the spring out on the Missouri River, and we caught, I caught like a 3-pound catfish. That's not a very big catfish, but hey, I caught a catfish, right? So it's fun. There's fun stories to tell from it. I almost fell off the boat into the river there. So yeah, there's tons of great memories. Also, experiencing new things that aren't fishing related. So, getting to go swimming, if you're down on the coast, go swim in the ocean, try new restaurants, try new foods, meet new people, see new scenery, whatever it might be. It's things that you wouldn't get to experience back home that if you didn't take this fishing trip, you wouldn't have gotten to experience. So to recap real quick, my 3 reasons why you should book an out-of-state fishing trip, and then we're going to go on to tips and tricks, is you get to target new bodies of water and new conditions that you may not face at home. You get to target new species that you won't get to face at home, and you just get to make a ton of great memories that are going to last you a lifetime, especially if you're going with friends or with family, and there's just a ton of fun to be had. All right, you guys, so the next thing we're going to get into is going to be our tips and tricks for when you're fishing out of state on an out-of-state fishing trip. So I'm going to break this down into 3 categories that make sense to me. The first category is going to be talking tips and tricks around combos. The next category is going to be baits, and then the final is just going to be in other category. All right, you guys. So starting off with combos, we're going to do combos, then baits, then the other. My first tip and trick regarding combos, I got two here, is going to be bring as much as you need without bringing too much. So what I mean by that is obviously you're packing. If you're going alone, great, you got a little extra space. But if you're going with people, you have limited space. So you need to be able to bring enough stuff to accomplish every goal you want. And by goal, I mean, all of your techniques, all of the conditions you think you're going to fish. You want to bring enough stuff to, be able to cover all that. But you don't want to bring so much that it's just annoying and in the way of everyone else. So I brought 3 rods with me, and I ended up buying a 4th because I need a saltwater combo. So saltwater combo is number 4. But the 3 I brought with me is I brought an everything rod, which is my Dobbins MK734C. It's a 7'3" heavy fast Dobbins rod from the Maverick series. It's got a Daiwa Tula CT 7.3-1 on it and 20-pound mono. This pretty much can do anything for me. I mean, I can do absolutely anything I want with this combo besides frogs. There's not a thing I wouldn't do on this combo. Like I said, besides frogs, I wouldn't. And I mean, you can even frog with this. It's not perfect, but you can frog with this. So, I mean, this combo can do absolutely everything from little tiny, I was throwing a Vision 110 Junior on there, a little tiny, quarter-ounce jerkbait. I was throwing buzz baits. I was throwing, 3/4 ounce swim jigs, which did a ton for me. I was throwing, swim baits. I was throwing, 10.5-inch Mondo worms, sit on the bottom and wiggle with them. Absolutely everything with this combo, right? Next rod I brought was obviously a topwater rod. I brought my Dobbins Maverick Series MK735C. So that's a mag heavy fast casting combo in a 7.3 size, and it's got a Shimano SLX XT 8.2-1 reel on it with 65-pound braid. That one's mostly set up for frogging, but I can, again, anything topwater. I can throw spooks, I can throw whopper ploppers, I can throw buzz baits, I can throw frogs, I can throw poppers, I can throw jitterbugs. I can throw a devil's horse, whatever it might be, I can throw it on there. So that is deemed my topwater. And then if I want to punch, I punch with that rod, but I don't really do any punching. I don't use tungsten. I haven't invested into tungsten yet. So I don't do a ton of punching, but like if I'm throwing heavy football jigs and I'm bulldozing the bottom, that's what I'm going to use just because it's such a heavy duty setup. And then the third and final combo that I brought with me was my Lose Mock Smash spinning combo. It's a 7-foot combo. I think it's like a 6.2-1 reel on it. I don't know. Reel speed doesn't really matter when you're throwing a spinning combo all that much. Obviously, it does, but it doesn't. And it's got 10-pound braid, and I threw that. That's my Texas rig. That's my wacky rig. That's my, trick worm and Ned head, and, kind of finessier stuff. That, I could throw on that first 7.3 all around combo, but it's just better on the spinning combo. And 3 combos isn't much, right? In my thought, if I'm bringing 1, I might as well bring 3. When you start talking 5, 6, 7 combos, you're talking a lot. But the difference in space in the vehicle between 1 and 3 combos isn't all that big. And then while I was down there, I bought a saltwater combo. It was a Shakespeare, I believe, is an Ambassador. It was like $32 at Walmart just to get me into saltwater fishing. It is a specific saltwater combo. It's a 7.6. And it came with 15-pound mono, which I'm actually going to cut off. And I'm going to change it out because I can continue to use this as a saltwater combo. But also here at home, I want it to have like probably 20-pound braid on it. And I'm going to use it as part of my cat fishing and carp fishing setup just because it's just heavy duty enough to be able to cover that. So all the combos weren't perfect for everything. Obviously, they covered everything I needed, right? Less is more. In these kind of scenarios, it's going to be a lot of bank beating for me. Some of you guys might have your kayaks or have your boats with you, and that's great if you're able to do that. But even if you're on a kayak, there's only so many combos you can bring. Those of you on boats, obviously you have a lot more space. You have rod lockers and stuff that you can bring extra stuff. But for the majority of us, the guys who are out bank fishing, the guys who are out kayaking, wet wading, whatever it might be, as long as you're not on a boat, less is more. You need to be able to cover everything, but you don't want to bring too much, right? Could I get a jerkbait rod and bring a jerkbait rod? Sure. How often do I use a jerkbait? I use 2 jerkbaits down there. I don't use jerkbaits that much. I'm getting into them. I like other stuff more right now. So, along the line of combos, like I said, tips 1 and 2 is just, bring what you need, but don't bring too much. Moving on to our baits. So my first tip here is to bring an assortment of baits that you're confident in. So for me, I didn't know what to expect fishing South Carolina, right? I've never fished in South Carolina. I have no idea what the bite is. I don't know what fish are biting like in July. I don't know if they are slow and lethargic, if they're aggressive. I had no idea what the water clarity was going to be like. I didn't have a clue, right? I was totally lost. So for what I chose to do is I picked out the lures that I'm confident in, and I brought a couple colors of each. So the reason I do this is it allows you to bring what you're confident in, a couple variations of each, but without, again, overpacking, right? So I have my box that I bring with me is a Plano. It's a 777-1. It's a big box. It's got 4 3700 size trays in it. It's got a couple 3500 size trays in it as well. But those are mostly terminal tackle and trailers and stuff. And then I have a little bit of space on top for some just loose miscellaneous stuff. So pretty much I've got 4 trays, right? I can bring 4 shallow 3700 size Plano trays. And so for me, for a week of fishing, I need to be able to have everything I need without it being too much. And so what I brought 4 chatterbaits, all in different. I brought a black and red, Carolina craw, Bama craw, and I think a white. Brought a couple Senko colors. I think I brought 4 of them. Brought 4 Zoom trick worm colors. Brought a blue and black VMC swim jig and then a white VMC swim jig. That blue and black swim jig is what killed it down there for me. And then a black and red chatterbait, obviously. Brought a couple jointed swim baits and a couple different patterns. I had some, more realistic bluegill style ones. I had some shad ones. Brought a crankbait box. In that crankbait box, I had a couple different colors for square bills, a couple colors for lipless crankbaits, jerk baits, deep divers, and then just traditional, just round bill crankbaits that we all know and love. So my first 3 boxes, so I have my kind of swim bait box, which is chatterbaits, swim jigs, jointed swim baits, stuff like that. My soft plastic box, which is going to be, my Senkos. It's going to have my craws, my trick worms. Now my crankbait box, which is going to, like I said, my square bills, my lipless, my jerk baits, my deep divers. And then I've got my top water box, which I had 4 frogs. I had a couple spooks with me. I like walking a spook. A couple whopper ploppers, a buzzbait, a popper, a jitterbug, and a devil's horse. I had all sorts of fun stuff in there. And then I kept a couple other things loose. Had some coal shads with me, some Nessies, a couple spinnerbaits. Spinnerbaits, the bite wasn't huge down there. They didn't like anything too crazy. I think they liked a little bit of vibration, but not much. So first tip under baits is going to be bring an assortment of baits that you are confident in. But don't fill your box with these, right? Bring enough that's going to get you what you need, but leave some space, because the next one is going to be bring a few lures that are known to do well in that area versus others. So obviously that's kind of tough, because you're like, okay, well, what am I supposed to bring, right? I've never fished on there. We have a great thing, guys, called the internet. Go on and use the internet. Go to forums, go to all sorts, whatever you can find to try and learn about what people are throwing down there and what is working well. So, a couple tips based on that are going to be obviously focus, one, you're going to look at the size of your bait, right? So typically, and this is very typical, and I understand there's exceptions to this, and this isn't perfect. Fishing's not a perfect science, but people down south like to throw bigger lures for bigger fish, and people up north and through the Midwest like to throw finesse stuff. So for me, I was going south, so I brought, I bought 7-inch Nessies. I had 8-inch coal shads. I had all sorts of, I had big jointed swim baits, or 2-ounce swim baits. I don't have any glide baits. I haven't gotten into like the taxi shads or anything like that yet. I don't have $200 spent on a lure, but bring a variety of shapes and sizes of lures that work down there. I bought some 10.5-inch, yum worms that are, humongous, that I don't think would ever catch a fish up here, because I don't think there's stuff here that's used to eating that. But down there, the fish are a little more aggressive, which is what I found, and I was right on that guess, and so I was able to use those. Also bring lures that can serve multiple purposes. So that's the next tip, is bring lures that can serve multiple purposes. So for trailers, I was bringing, I had jerk shads with me. They can be a trailer for a swim jig or a chatterbait or a spinnerbait, and they can also just be used Texas rigged and, flipping that around through cover. You can use your chatterbaits. You can jig them. You can obviously retrieve them normally. You can burn them over the top, almost like a wake bait, but bring stuff that can serve you multiple purposes. Obviously not every lure can do that, but bring as much as you can to cover as much as you want without, again, because you don't want to overpack. Also, make sure you have a couple lures for any type of conditions. That's the next tip. So you want stuff for each kind of watercolor. So if it's super clear, if it's super murky, you want stuff for different weather. If it's going to be, if it's going to be a cool day down there, if it's going to be a hot day, if they're going to be super pressured, structure, you want to be able to throw into structure. So I have stuff to flip into trees and branches. Have stuff that, covers different target species, right? So for me, I was freshwater fishing most of the time for bass. So I brought a lot of bass stuff. But when I went saltwater fishing, I had to go out and buy some saltwater stuff because, a redfish won't bite the same thing a bass bites. So if I'm going to go fish for redfish, well, I need to get stuff that redfish bite for. And then if you're packing for multiple species, there's some lures that can cover multiple species. So bring as many of those as possible. This is very similar to our combos. Again, less is more. That is the big takeaway from this whole podcast. I want you guys to realize is that when you're traveling for, if you're taking your fishing stuff and you're going to travel out of state, less is more, because trust me, it gets, if you got 50 pounds of stuff with you, you got to carry that everywhere you go. And I'll tell you what, boy, does it get tiring if you have 50 pounds worth of stuff. I had probably, if you add up 20 pounds in my box, and then I got my 3 combos. And even that, that's quite a bit of weight to be lugging around in 95-degree heat down where it's humid along the ocean. So yeah, those are our tips for baits. Again, bring an assortment of baits you're confident in. Bring lures that are known to do well in that area specifically. Bring lures that are good for each type of condition. So plan for any kind of condition wherever you're going to go, because like I said, you typically don't know what you're going to encounter until you get there. And then if you're fishing for multiple species like I like to do, bring stuff that, covers as many species as possible, just so you have a chance at everything. Finally, we're going to move on to our tips for, our other category for tips and tricks. All right, you guys. So for our other category, the first tip, we have 6 here. Yep, we have 6 total tips here. First one is remember to buy the correct license or licenses for the state. So I started off with my freshwater license and fished that for the first 3 days. I used that all 6 days. But by day 4, I was ready to saltwater fish, and so I had to go on and buy a separate saltwater license from South Carolina. Make sure that you have the correct license when you go and fish. Do not go fishing unlicensed. Pay the money. It's not that much. It's not worth the ticket. Let's do things right. Next is going to be do your research prior to your trip to plan out your spots. That is something that I didn't do very well, and I regretted it because it took me to like day 5 to really branch out and find some different spots that were fun to fish. Ways to do that, obviously you can go to online forums. Reddit's a good one. There's a ton of people that talk fishing on Reddit if you like to go on there. There's a ton of other bass fishing forums out there, or whatever species you're going to fish for. You can go on Apple Maps or Google Maps, and if you want to know how to use those, go check out episode 4. We talk everything out there about how to find new spots. I believe that was episode 4. It might have been episode 3. But go ahead and check out that episode. Let me pull it up I'm going to look it up for you guys real quick, because I actually can't remember. I feel like it was episode 4, but let's see. It might have been episode 3. Yep, it was episode 4. It's titled How to Find New Fishing Spots in One Super Easy Reel Modification. So yeah, that's, like I said, if you want to find new spots, go listen to episode 4. Tip number 3 is going to be bring everything you will need without bringing too much. So again, that's going from rods and reels to lures, and then also think about your scale. You're going to want a scale if you're going to catch a big fish. You're going to want scissors. You got to cut line, pliers, extra line, terminal tackle, rod keepers, rod socks, reel gloves, whatever you bring, right? Whatever you bring with you on a fishing trip, whatever that might be, make sure you cover everything you need without bringing too much. So you don't need 3 pairs of pliers, right? Just bring the 1 pair of pliers. God forbid you lose them. I guarantee you there's somewhere around there to go buy a new pair of pliers. If you lose a pair of scissors, again, there's a place to buy scissors. Hopefully you don't lose them. But, it's not like you're going to be in the middle of the ocean for 6 weeks and you lose your pair of pliers and you're done. So, again, bring everything you will need without bringing too much. Next, look up your local species. Look up what's going to be there. I didn't do this very well, and I wish I had. But look up where they're located, how to target them, certain baits and techniques and scents, what their patterns are, what people have noticed. And again, you can go through, look online forums, there's all sorts of, watch YouTube videos. There's all sorts of ways to get this sort of information nowadays. So use it, utilize it, and hopefully you'll be catching plenty of species. Our second to last tip for in the other category is going to be know all of the local rules and regulations related to fishing. So, what are limit sizes? Number of hooks that you're allowed to use, for lines in the water, what is deemed acceptable for bait. That changes state to state, right? Some places allow game fish, some don't. Some states allow 5 hooks, some allow 3. So it's just trying to figure out and make sure that you are, within the state's rules and regulations. So we're fishing fairly and legally. We don't want to be breaking laws. We don't want to be doing things we're not supposed to do. We want to catch these fish correctly. And the last tip is going to be look up local predators to watch out for. And this comes from me almost stepping on alligators. I knew there was alligators down there. Saw them as soon as I got there. But, you don't know what's down there until you get there. So make sure you know what's going on. Be safe, be smart. Obviously, we all want to go have fun and have a great fishing trip, but we also want to come back from it. So we're going to recap all of our tips here. So starting with our combos, the big tip there is going to be bring as much as you need without bringing too much, and less is more. You want to bring stuff that is good enough to cover everything you need, but it doesn't have to be perfect. It's okay. It's not a tournament. If you are going out of state for a tournament, that's a different story. You've probably got a boat, so whatever. Going for baits, bring an assortment of baits you're confident in. Bring an assortment of baits that will do well in that area, that you may, even if you're not confident in them. Bring enough baits to be able to fish any sort of condition. And then bring enough baits to target the species you want to target. And then moving into our other category, buy the correct license is number 1. Number 2, do the research prior to the trip to plan out spots. Number 3 is bring everything you will need without bringing too much, going back to like our scales and all of our extra stuff. Number 4 is look up your local species, so know where they're located, how to target them, etc. Number 5, know all of the local rules and regulations for that state related to fishing. So, and I guess one more quick example of this is when I was surf fishing, only certain beaches you can surf fish at. If it's deemed a swimming spot, you're not allowed to surf fish in South Carolina. So look up all of the rules, read through them, memorize them, and just be a good fisherman, be a good angler, someone who's diligent and is doing the right thing. And then number 6 is look up local predators to watch out for. If it's going to be coyotes, mountain lions, alligators, snakes, whatever it might be, humongous snapping turtles. You don't want to be getting yourself into a situation where it's going to ruin your fishing trip. So that is the end of the episode today, guys. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. I had a ton of fun in South Carolina, ton of cool videos coming from it. Coming out in the next couple months on my YouTube. So go ahead and check that out. Tyler Plackefishing on YouTube. Tons of cool videos on there already, but like I said, a ton of cool stuff coming. If you like today's episode, please be sure to drop us a review. You can do a written review on Apple for my Apple people. If you are still Apple and like Spotify or an Android user, whatever, drop us a 5-star rating on Spotify. And also please be sure to drop a follow on either platform. Like I said, please be sure to check out my Instagram and my YouTube. I know I've talked about that before on here. But I do appreciate if you guys do that. Give me a follow on there. Talk to me there. Send me questions for the upcoming Tackle Box episodes. We're going to have more of the Tackle Box coming back. So yeah, I really do appreciate your guys' time. Thank you so much for listening to the episodes. It means a ton to me. It's a ton of fun to put this podcast on. Talk about, what we all love to do, which is fishing. So that is today's episode, guys. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, tight lines.